Hello, my name is Eric Kayan, and I'm going to be discussing professional teaching standards and how they correlate with my profession, which is teaching mathematics. Right? So, target for the presentation is I'm going to discuss a couple standards from the InTask and the SPA, which I have those listed below what those things are. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple standards from each section. All right, the SPA standard will be one that's most relevant to my profession, and I'll discuss a couple common themes between the standards. I'll discuss how the standards address professional collaboration and data-driven instruction, what that means for those two, what it is I have to do in order to, complete those two things, right? How will those standards address those two ideas? And then finally, I'm going to describe how the standards sort of relate to me as a teacher and what sort of responsibilities and things that it puts on me in order to improve my teaching skills and what it is I have to do to advance in my profession. Okay, so the standards for comparison that I chose. Okay, standard 5 for the InTask, application of content. Standard number 6 for InTask is the assessment piece. And so standard number 6, I will compare with the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics, which is the SPA standard that closely relates to what I teach. Okay, so standard number 6 will be compared to standard number 5, which is assessing impact on student learning. And then standard number 4, teaching meaningful mathematics, I will come up with I have a common theme that I will talk about that I will put with standard number 5, which is application of content, right? So 5 will go with 4 and 6 will go with 5. All right, so the common theme number 1, using tech to connect lessons to the real world. All right, so relating math topics to the real world is tough, right? All the time you run into a really dry word problem where it's just not relatable anymore, you know what I mean? So it's really tough finding math topics or sort of demonstrating stuff that they're really going to see in the real world. Because a lot of times, Mr. K, where am I going to see this stuff? And I always have to be like, well, you'll probably never see this stuff, right? That's probably what's going to happen in most cases. If you're not taking a math or science route, a lot of this stuff you don't generally see again. Okay, so anytime you do run into a topic that does relate to a real world situation, you got to make sure you seize those opportunities, right? You got to make sure that you're demonstrating that, showing some cool examples, and then when you have lessons like that or topics, students tend to be engaged more or understand the content more because it relates to something in the real world. Okay, technology can help demonstrate those concepts. Okay, so connecting lessons to the real world in a survey done by, in a survey of 692 people, okay, this was in the article titled "The United States, What Makes an Effective Teacher." There was a survey done between students, parents, teachers, administrators, education researchers, and policymakers, okay, about what are the top 10 qualities they would like to see in a teacher. So there's 10 of them, right? So I just picked these two that kind of closely relate to those standards, right? The ability to engage student learning and creativity in planning and delivering instructions. I think both of those, okay, play a key role in finding problems that relate to real-world situations or coming up with one on your own, right? That's what we have to do as professionals. We have to make sure that we're always trying different avenues and creating different problems that may or may not have a better example for the students to sort of pick up on, right? Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss, right? But you got to be willing to sort of try. And I feel like Desmos, YouTube, GeoGebra, and Netflix are great tools in order to help engage or demonstrate lessons to the real world. Okay. The next common theme, using assessments to help guide your instruction. Okay, so I feel that assessments can be used effectively and ineffectively, all right, depending on what it is you're teaching. So you got to make sure that, well, if you're about to give an exam on a particular topic and the students have just not been getting it, right, and you give it a super hard test, well, guess what? You're going to get super bad results, right? So you got to be able to know your audience because a lot of times, let's face it, tests can be stressful on students, right? And they don't always demonstrate the growth and skills of a student, right? Sometimes students are bad test takers. So it's important to, come up with different ideas and ways to assess your students because there's this strong emphasis on, tests and quizzes, right? Well, you don't want to not harness those kids that are great in that aspect of learning, okay? But you also don't want to make it the end all, right? Sometimes a student's growth can't be measured just by a test or a quiz, right? Sometimes it has to be measured in other ways. So coming up with lessons guided through your assessments help, not only you demonstrate that you know your students and your audience, okay, but B, you're also looking to, okay, how can I, what do I have to teach, or what do I have to know, or these guys have to know in order that they better understand the topic, right? So where I'm going with this one is that, teacher's experience and having a deep understanding of the content is key, okay, but that's not the, after studies have shown that after 5 or 6 years, that deep content knowledge and teacher experience starts to taper off, right? And you either have it at 5 years or you don't, right? And hopefully at 5 years, I'll understand what style I need in order to better engage my students, right? So that being said, using formal and informal assessments in order to gauge your students are key, right? Something as simple as maybe coming up to the board, or maybe they do a collaborative project, or you just, you're walking around looking at their homework, right? Different ways of assessing your students, okay, or just seeing their progress or what they can do, right? Not based on solely their tests and quizzes, right? Because let's face it, tests and quizzes can be stressful. Some students aren't the best test takers, and I don't think that should be the end all for the learning process, right? You can measure your students other ways, okay? Collaboration. So collaboration inside the classroom. I picked these two standards again to sort of tie in with collaboration, right? So I just kind of came up with this. I just sort of pulled a couple of these titles together. I just called it Application of Meaningful Mathematics, right? Creating lessons that incorporate real-world problems and implementing other topics into your lessons, right? Maybe you incorporate some science or some art or some tech drawing. Again, any sort of creativity in coming up with different ways to demonstrate a topic will not only, engage more students, but give them a deeper understanding of what it is they're learning, right? And so collaborative project with students and other teachers will help that as well, right? Not only get the students working together and learning from each other, but perhaps you come up with a project that you and a teacher are doing together with maybe your art class and your math class. So there's different avenues in demonstrating topics, right? And so data-driven instruction. Okay, again, I use these two standards to talk about this piece here. So not every assessment should be a test or quiz. You should come up with other creative ways of gauging your students' growth and skills, and then that will sort of drive what sort of lessons or what sort of things they or you need to work on as teachers and students, okay? Accommodate for the more troublesome lessons, right? If you got a big lesson coming up, right, maybe take a couple days on it, all right? Or maybe, or maybe you zoom through one lesson, so maybe you teach 2 lessons in an afternoon just because the students understand it so rapidly. So you got to be able to adjust and, know your audience and be able to gauge what their strengths or weaknesses are. And students working at the board, again, I'm a big fan of that. Get them up on the board, get them showing their skills in front of their peers, let their peers see what it is they have to do in order to solve things. I just feel like it encourages a very positive environment, right? And the teacher expectations that come with the in-task, right, at least the 5 pieces I read, right? You want to be able to grow in your profession, right? Remember, you're a role model inside and outside of the classroom, right? So you want to make sure that you're always doing the right things, right? You always want to make sure that you're creative. You're always trying different avenues in order to demonstrate different topics. You want to make sure that you know your audience in the sense that you want to be able to, know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and that sort of gauges what it is you have to teach that day. Content knowledge, again, that is very important. You got to make sure you know what it is you're talking about. And then building relationships amongst students and trust amongst your students is also key to, getting them work for you, right? If a student likes you more or respects you more, chances are they'll probably do more work for you, right? So building those relationships, showing them that you care not only about their studies, but them as an individual can only be a positive for you and for the environment. So anyway, that's my talk. There's my resources. Hopefully I made it in the time here, and have a good day.